Closer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll call the meeting to order. We have just Molly to be excused. Do we have that motion from someone? Tracy makes the motion. All in favor? Minutes from May 23rd were circulated. Anne-Marie? Motion to approve. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Are there any post-agenda items? Seeing none, I'm going to go through something that I neglected at the start, and that is to introduce people in the gallery and ourselves. So we will start with Lane this time.
Good morning, Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
Pam Elliott, Admin Assistant Planning and Development.
Good morning, Ellen Unra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
Wayne Hammergan, Division 4, which is Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, and I represent the area. I'm Division 5, which is south and west around Brooks.
Welcome, Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
Brian DeJong, around the Dutchess area.
Good morning, Clarence Amulong. I represent the Rolling Hills area and I chair MPC.
Morning, I'm Kelly Chrisman. I'm from the west side of the county, Division 6, outside of Bassano.
Good morning, Hubie Kellum, Division 2, Tilly area.
Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Good morning, Lionel Just, your division, which you're all familiar with.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our guests. Our permitted use report is included in your agenda. Yes. Thank you very much. Something always happens when I come into the last minute of a meeting. Thanks, Pam. Can we adopt the agenda, please? Lionel, all in favor? Thank you. Now I'll try again with the permitted use report. Are there any questions? Brian.
There's one on there, Dawn and Darren Drader. It says Div 3. Is that correct, or is that Div 8? I know they live just north of Dutchess, but if they have another property, excuse me, if they have another property someplace, that's fine.
The land is actually owned by her dad, Doug Gray. It's his farm that they're putting the manufactured home on.
Any other questions? If not, we will accept it as information and move on to subdivisions. And Diane.
Good morning. We have one to discuss this morning, so I'll just take you through it, and then I'm sure we're going to have some comments from some of the adjacent landowners because we have had information that's provided in your package, but I'll just outline it for you. So again, this is application 2019-0-065. So the purpose of this application is to create one new parcel of approximately 3.18 acres containing an existing residence shop, dugout, grain bin sheds from a previously unsubdivided quarter section. Again, the quarter is the northeast of 2019-13. It's in Division 10, about 4 miles east and 3.5 miles north of the city of Brooks. So a surveyor sketch was included in your package, and it appears that the dwelling and buildings can all be contained within the proposed lot. The dwelling itself is set back 26 meters instead of our 30.05 from the property line, and so we would be looking at a waiver to that. The dugout is also located in the southern portion of the parcel, and it again does not meet our proposed setbacks of 100 feet from any new proposed property line, and again consideration of waivers, or in your package we have had some other solutions that could happen there. Water is from the Rural Water Co-op, and sewage is dealt with through a septic tank and field. Access is from Township Road 194, and there are 2 developed approaches into the residual parcel. Information from the Alberta Energy Regulator indicates there's no abandoned wells on the quarter, but there are 3 active wells within the quarter section. There are no wetlands on the parcel, and there's no historic resources. So when we circulated this, we did get responses. So we do have the first one from TELUS, who has no objections. We do have an adjacent landowner letter from Jay Carlton, and that should be in your package. We had an adjacent landowner letter from Tyrone Carlton. That's part of your package in the informative. We have one from Carl and Linda Slomp. We have an additional one that was sent as well, I'm assuming in response to this, but also to the county. So that was included for your consideration. There is a letter from Wade and Francis Tobler. And I'm not sure if we had a chance to update these, but we did get late responses back in from Fortis. They have no concerns, and they do not require an easement for this. And our final one is from Enerplus Resources Corporation. They've indicated that they have interest in the land subject within the legal description, and they've been transferred to the CNRL, and that happened in March of 2019. So with that, I am recommending approval of the application subject to 2 conditions: 1, outstanding property taxes, and that 2, that the proposed dugout on the west and south we either enlarge the parcel to ensure that we have adequate setbacks to the dugout, or we actually have the dugout be removed or filled in so that we don't have that encroachment issue anymore. And I am recommending that we provide the waiver to the front setback because it's an existing dwelling. So I'm happy to answer any questions that MPC has as well. I know that I've been in contact with some of the adjacent landowners, and I know they may wish to have comments or speak to this.
Okay, but first of all, I'm going to ask for questions from MPC. Kelly?
Did we receive those letters from adjacent landowners?
They are part of the package, and they form part of the informative, so all of the adjacent landowner letters are found in the resolution under informative.
Okay, thank you.
So seeing no other questions at this time, I would ask if there are any from the gallery who would like to speak. Carl? Have to use the mic so people can't hear anyone.
I'm an adjacent landowner there and also have been renting the property for 12 years before, which I guess maybe is neither here nor there, but on the subdivision 2, it talks about bins included, and those bins were purchased by myself. They're not, they should not be listed as part of the subdivision, for one thing. I don't know why it wasn't, it was always very clear that the bins were purchased by myself. And so they wound up on that letter, and I phoned the owners and they says, oh yeah, no, we'll take care of that. But obviously it hasn't been taken care of. And I would also agree that that pond should be filled in. It hasn't been in use for a while. It's got a bunch of junk in it. And I think Manulife is just trying to get rid of a liability that was existing, a known liability when they bought the property. And so I think that should be filled. I also don't think the way the house is and the way the septic, I don't know if there's enough room for a revised septic system in there, the way they have that. I'm not sure if with that 3 acres, if it's large enough to do that. And I think this maybe speaks, I don't know if this is the place to bring it up, but I think Manulife is coming to our area and they see it as an area of opportunity, and they want to do this to every property they buy, subdivide off the yard and then rent out the rest. And it's being rented by the land that they have by renters from Carmen Gay, and I don't think it's helpful to the community. Like, they come in, they farm it, they don't leave, they don't buy their machinery here, they don't buy, well, they might, I'm not saying they never would, but they farm from outside the area, they have a view of the way they do things, and I just don't think it's good for the community. And I think, I realize that there isn't much we can do about stopping subdivision because it's the first one in a quarter, but I want to voice our objections, or our quite strong objections to their method of, taking over a community. I think they've said this is the winter areas, they view it as an area of opportunity, so that means that they are going to be probably bidding against the local farmers for any land that comes up, any parcels that fall within their the way they want to do business, I guess. And I just don't think that this bodes well for the future of our community. And I guess that's one. I don't want to make this any easier for them than we have to. And I just don't think it's, the subdivision itself is not, I think it should be bigger if you're going to do it. There's more of the corner that could be subdivided, which would allow the future people, I think, a more viable subdivision too. There's also is an EID, and it's not listed in there, and I think it should be considered too. There's an EID rural water supply pipe that goes across the quarter section from the south, and there's no easement involved in this. And for a future, there'd be no irrigation water without an easement on that line. There is a line, but it should have an easement connecting it to the south end of the quarter to the yard. It's probably not listed on there because it's a line that Joe himself installed, but the EID has a riser on the south property line with Wade and N, and there's a pipe that's installed right to the yard, and that's not taken into account either. So there's just a few of my comments. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for me.
Any questions? Yes, Anne-Marie.
Not necessarily a question. I agree with you that the dugout, we have to look at that, whether we're going to allow a setback or not. When you talked about the parcel size and maybe it should be bigger, I couldn't help but thinking, be careful what you wish for, because if we make them too big, people will come back and split them in two, and then you have 2 acreages there. So there was something to keep in mind.
Ryan?
Yeah, and I guess my concern is, and I think it was expressed in all the letters that were put in the paper or in our package, and that was in the septic. So my question is to our staff: how is that going to be addressed as far as is it appropriate for that dwelling, and is it up to code as far as I know when it's replaced? There's a procedure that goes in place with the geography or the the soil sampling, and they'll tell you how big a parcel you need for that septic. But I'm not clear on when it's existing and it maybe doesn't meet standards. What is the options for the landowner to bring it into compliance so that it doesn't affect the whole application? And so before you answer that, I just wanted to ask Carl something a little, or maybe my concern is a little bit when the county doesn't get involved in buying and selling property, and I don't think we ever should or would. At least I hope we wouldn't, because that's between the landowner and whoever is looking at selling his land, or who is looking at purchasing that land. So unfortunately, in this situation, as you very aptly described, it's not the only one in the county, and that remains free, the free business of the property owner to sell to whom he can get the most money from, or who, if he doesn't take the most money, he or she decides who they sell their property to. And the county's not, we're not in a position where we can enforce that, nor ever would want to be, I wouldn't think so.
I guess I understand that, but and I know it's a provincial rule. In Saskatchewan, they've made rulings regarding corporate and financial institution ownership of land that has restricted it some. And I just thought, well, maybe it's something that the Alberta urban municipalities, rural municipalities. We have sent a letter to the appropriate authorities in the province too, just asking them to review the land ownership rules and whether this is healthy for agriculture of the future. So we've done that, and I guess we just wanted to bring our views to council, because council also deals with, well, the rural municipalities, and as far as I know, the way the septic system works now, there was a pipe running into the county road ditch last summer. So I'm just saying that something is not the way it should be. So that's my concern. Okay, thank you.
Carl, I want to echo what Brian has said. A lot of what you're talking about is beyond our scope, so I'm not sure. Did you want to make a comment?
I have a couple of comments, if that's all right. I do want to speak first to the bins. And again, that was an oversight on my part. So as you see what's on the screen right now, you see the bins located in the south portion, all kind of dashed. Can't really read it, but it says bins to be removed. So that means that, yes, when I mentioned bins, it really should have said there's bins on place, but they will not be part and parcel of the application. So I stand corrected on that one, please. The second one, to answer the septic field and that conversation, I have had discussions with some of the other planners in the office, and actually a sort of same situation has just kind of popped up in Lethbridge County, and they actually have, and I would have to check with some of the installers, but it's very similar that they can camera the fields and the tank. So it's very similar to doing the tank inspection that we're doing in North Headgates. So they'd empty the tank, they'd be required to go in and inspect, and then, as I've heard, they can camera the field. So then they would do a report back to say if it's sufficient or not. So one condition could be placed that a septic field inspection be undertaken, and that the results be presented to the subdivision authority, and if the case requires that it is not up to code, that a development agreement be entered into, that field and tank be upgrade it. So we have ways to deal with that particular one, because I did also note that that was a concern. So I do have some other things, but I'm going to wait perhaps until we listen to some other of the comments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hello. I'm opposed to the subdivision being here as well, and another party that's away on medical appointments. I'm here on behalf of them as well. They're opposed to it. She covered if we have to move forward with the subdivision. I'm glad that the septic will be checked, because it has been pumped into the road ditch for a number of years there, as being right across from it. My question, I guess, is why do we have to have a subdivision on every single quarter section in the county? We, as a third-generation farmer here, I'm right up against the wall on some areas of my farm now of being able to work at the hours that I want. People are driving in my yard and mouthing us off because our tractors were working at 2 in the morning trying to get some hay off. And we're having problems now with being able to get airplanes in to spray. They basically told us that one field now they're just going to stay away from because they're getting calls. Like, this is becoming a major issue. And I would just really like to voice that. I got young kids coming up that are interested in the business. We're looking at expanding too. I realize we're in a capitalist system and other people have to come in and can pay more. Well, that's good for them, but we just need to really pay attention to subdividing out here so that everybody can be a part here, and my kids can have a chance at growing up and being able to have a sustainable operation. I guess that's my biggest thing, and I did have that in my letter. Did everybody read all the letters? Okay. Appreciate that, thank you. Any questions for myself?
Yes.
I guess just one comment. Please try to understand our position in that we hear from farmers with second generation or third generation kids wanting to set up this corner and be able to get financing. So we don't set the rules for one property individually. We set the rules blanket, and we hear from farmers who want their kids to come to the corner pivot and be able to get financing for that. So please just understand that point of view as well.
Yes, thank you, and I do. And actually, my father and I and parents did something similar, but we didn't subdivide. We were here at one time and got permission, and we put up a second residence without doing a subdivision. And I realize that they might want to go down that road for a subdivision, but they're also there for life. They're there. Their kids are coming up. Their kids are coming up. They're staying in it, right? This isn't out-of-towners moving into our area and people driving into our yards yelling at us, and spinning their tires out in front of the driveway because in the middle of the night because they were mad that we were at work in the night before. These are people that are involved in the business and understand what's going on.
There are many sides to the story. I would not be here today if we couldn't have subdivided because, No, we appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sorry, Therese.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify, what is our minimum size for parcel size?
Diane?
Just from my own memory.
3 acres.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to comment too, being someone that's moved into an acreage in a farming community, and it's one of those right to work kind of things, and I know for myself, I'm not bothered by the farming or the cattle and all that, because that's the community that I moved into. That's the atmosphere that I chose to when I bought my property. So I just think that there is also that as well, is that people are wanting to move into agriculture areas for that lifestyle. They can maybe not have it on their own, but they're going to move into an acreage such as this and enjoy the atmosphere. And I hope that is why people are coming to our community. So just a comment on that.
Yep, thank you.
Trying to be a little cautious here, but I also think that the farmers have some responsibility to not be an inconvenience to residents in the county. I happen to be a resident in the county now. I'm not a farmer any longer. And my neighbors who are farming our land are very cooperative and they're careful about how much noise they make and dust and whatnot. On a bad day, they won't operate on a bad day. For me, for us. And I think as a farm community, maybe we could respect other people who live within our boundaries also. And I think there's some value in that for everybody.
Okay, how do you wish to move forward? First of all, we will have yes, Diane, you wanted to make...
Great. If I get an opportunity, I guess I just want to speak to some of the concerns that I read in the letters and to provide some information. And I guess the first one maybe is the EID easement. Again, they didn't provide comments on this particular one, but just to remind everyone that they are of a higher power than us. And they are required to sign consents to register plans, and if there's issues with pipeline easements and right-of-ways and figuring out water turnouts and whatever, they will do it. But on the plan, it does show that there is a water pipeline right-of-way from 95, so I don't know if that's covering off what the one landowner indicated along the bottom of the quarter section, but there are some easements that are currently on title, but again, the EID will ensure that they've got that figured out before they will allow this to be registered. So just that comment. The other one, because there was a comment about the configuration of the parcel and whether or not the end gun and where the pivot track was and those types of things. So I managed to get a very late email, as you can see up there, yesterday after 4:30, from the surveyor. He wasn't able to attend today, but there is, if you can see, very faint lines at the bottom of the screen. Alice, those blue ones, yeah. That shows where the end gun goes and where the pivot track is, and they both just kind of sneak past. So unfortunately, through the air photo, it looks like that, like they're farming around the current developed yard site, but that could be it. So in discussions with them yesterday, I did indicate that normally when we have these types of subdivisions and we happen to have a house or dwelling yard site in a corner, we tend to like to do, see if we can stick it there. We talked about having our regular kind of corner area that would, again, put a piece of it back in so it makes more sense, follow the pivot track, have our arc for the, further down, Alice. I don't know. There. Yay. Right there. I'm leaving it just like that. Yeah. So our normal vacant parcel policy is based on normal 7-acre vacant pivot corners. So again, if we wanted to stay under that, currently it's 3 acres, but you could add some of the additional dry area to the east. Always my east and west are always mixed up. To the east, which would then put that more in a corner area, allow the cultivation of a portion of that corner, because again, if we were going to remove the dugout, which is kind of what my recommendation would be as well, is not to provide easements on a non-used dugout, that be reclaimed and that we could then reconfigure the parcel to be no bigger than, and my guess is we're taking it a little bit bigger, so you wouldn't maybe want more than 5 acres. To remind MPC of our subdivision policies, in our agricultural district, we allow 1 parcel per quarter. And we also have a thing called a re-subdivision of an existing small title. And we don't require a rezone on that, but the idea behind that one was that if you've already fragmented something, instead of taking out a second pivot corner, let's put 2 of those houses together and put the density on that already fragmented piece. But each one of those parcels would have to be a minimum of 3 acres. So if you created a parcel that was 5 acres, it couldn't be re-subdivided under that policy. They would have to come back and do a rezone that would require an additional policy. So that would be a way to get a little bit more land if they needed a septic field, get a little bit, a configuration that allows for typical farming around the circle pivot, and also kind of restrict the additional development of a subdivision without notification to neighbors and being able to have council determine whether or not it's appropriate at that location. So I'm kind of throwing a lot at you to think about it, but again, just to kind of confirm what I would recommend as approval is, again, property taxes, that condition 2 be changed, I guess, to just say that the dugout be removed versus moving or reconfiguring the parcel size. That we put a condition that there be a septic field inspection to the satisfaction of the county, and that we have the parcel reconfigured in a manner that is no larger than, if you want to say 4 acres or 5 acres, they can figure that out. Or you could say 3 acres, but I think we're probably not going to add a lot if we take the little chunk off and add it to the east side. Not sure it's going to help out much, but again, you could just do a parcel size that would again come in to me at the office. If it appeared to be something that, was the intent of what this board had indicated. If not, I would bring it back and you would have to approve whatever that parcel size is. So we can do a couple different ways. But that's my recommendation, and that we also provide the 4-meter relaxation to the existing dwelling that's there.
Diane, we've also done it the other way where we say the end gun is shut off. I think we did one last week, our last meeting.
And it's a tough one because, again, I'm going to go to my own personal experience. We rent our land and we have an acreage, and we want the end gun on so they water our trees. Don't tell the SMRD because they're watering stuff they shouldn't. So again, it's difficult to control if someone's doing. It's like and to put that as a condition, then we would have to monitor that condition. So I think again, we have had it that they require easements if they want to cultivate their land or whatever. But again, that to me is beyond the subdivision purview, and I don't know if we would want to include that as any kind of condition. I think you just have to look at how the land would be used, and again, it would be between the two people.
Anne-Marie.
With so many changes, wouldn't it be better to take it back to the landowner and then discuss with them what they want?
That's an option as well. I have discussed it with the surveyor, and they are actually acting as the agent on behalf of the landowner. So they verbally have given us, options that they would be okay with. If you'd like, I have also had the conversation with them that we do have additional time. This one, the 60-day requirement for us to make a decision is July 5th. So we could postpone this, bring it back to the next meeting, ask for the surveyor to spend the next 2 weeks conferring with their client, and come back in front of MPC to determine whether or not they'd be okay with that. So that's an option as well.
I know.
Well, I have a little problem with the condition that we are going to inspect or have it inspected, the septic field. We've not done that at all ever since I've been on council. We've never had that request, and I personally think that it's a landowner issue, not MPC issue. The only time we did do it was at North Head Gates for a different reason. But on an individual basis like this, I don't agree with having a condition that the septic field has to be inspected first.
Diane?
Through the chair, I guess my response to that is I'm not sure we've had adjacent landowner letters that have indicated they have a concern about a septic field that's not functioning. I can't in the years that I've been here ever indicated that. So I think in this particular case, the MPC is required under the subdivision and development reg to ensure that there is adequate water and wastewater facilities to a parcel. So if there isn't anyone there, we'd want to say, for example, on our vacants, we require them to do soil tests to ensure that they can put one in. And if they have one, if there has been, we just take them by their word, but I have some concern listing that there's been pumping raw sewage into an open ditch. And again, that's hearsay, but in order for someone to say, well, if that's not true, then it is up to the applicant to prove that they have a valid operating system. So I still would highly recommend that MPC put that condition on. It's again a couple $100 inspection for them to do this for peace of mind, to ensure that we're placing conditions, if there is an approval, that meet the concerns that we've heard and that have been identified through the referral process. Now the adjacent landowners have an opportunity to appeal. So your consideration of their comments up front are quite critical in a subdivision process. So I think that that's something to consider, and to me, to meet the needs and to mitigate the concerns that have been addressed, that's one condition that could do it.
Alan?
Well, I agree with you, Diane. You know, this could be an environmental problem as well if there's raw sewage going into a county ditch. So I definitely am in favor of the inspection in this case, especially when several neighbors have written that they've seen this happening for years. So in this case, I would be in favor of that.
Kelly?
I like your suggestion. I like the fact that we're taking into consideration the primary use of the section, quarter section. And I'm prepared to make a motion of approval with your conditions as outlined. I think considering the, I mean, it's just an eyeball view, but as long as it's 3 to 5 acres, no more than 5, I would be fine with making that motion today.
I'm a little lost why you're suggesting expansion of the piece.
I'm not suggesting, but I just think following the pivot, it may be a little bit more, it may be a little bit less. It's just a pencil drawing. Would you rather wait?
Well, we got, what the drawing shows 3 acres, correct?
Yes.
And where would we get 5?
With the change, there will be some cut off, some added, going with the pivot track. Would you prefer to wait on the exact size? That's our only question here, is what the size of the parcel will be now. But I had problems last meeting with approving. The major use of the property is pivot, is irrigation and agriculture. And if those two owners, neighbors, choose not to get along, the pivot is a problem suddenly in somebody's world. So I like this suggestion. I really do.
You know, Kelly, we have that problem as a county with all pivots all the time. It's just a simple mechanism of them shutting off the end gun. That's all we're talking about. Every road that we have near to a pivot deals with that. It's that common.
I agree with you, Clarence. And how many roads and side ditches do we see getting wet? Our staff spends a lot of time and money on those end guns that are not shut off.
Anne-Marie?
I prefer to wait till next meeting when we have an exact subdivision that we know what we vote on. I kind of feel uncomfortable voting on something that's going to change in the next week or so.
So, have you made a motion?
I will withdraw and hold it till the next meeting. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, Carl. I'll let Diane answer that.
Yeah, that one's left up to the individual landowner. So the county doesn't get involved with what they would call household water purposes agreements to provide water to the acreage. They would have to negotiate that. So either at the time of subdivision now, again, normally you can see in our comments, and hopefully we'll check with the EID to ensure that they get some comments in prior to next meeting, and it normally indicates that they do take the acre feet off of this particular, they make the acreage dry, and you have to enter into a different type of agreement for water. So some do it, some don't. I would assume that most people that have an acreage, they would want it, but that's not anything that the county has required people to do.
Okay, we haven't had a motion made, we've had it withdrawn, we've had a suggestion made to postpone. Is that official, Anne-Marie?
That's official? Do I have to make a motion to postpone? Okay, it's official.
Okay, and that we would have max till July 5th. Is that correct?
Correct. We would want to make a decision one or the other at the June 23rd meeting.
Okay.
If we postponed again, I think it's after that is the next one. So we don't want to lose our opportunity to make a decision on it. And I'm assuming I'm getting direction for them to provide an updated sketch to show parcel size. And I'll have that conversation with them, and if possible, to have someone here to speak to it. Okay.
And I think it's much like we did, I think it was even the last one where we postponed one to get more information, so that rather than leaving it up to you with conditions, let's make sure what conditions are being met.
I think MPC has to feel really comfortable with the decision that's being made, and this one is a little more complicated than just sort of a normal first parcel out. So I definitely will relay that to the applicant and their agents and see what we can come up with by next week.
Okay, yes, Tracy?
Yeah, I think, like, for me, I would like sort of the things that are still kind of going in my mind that are questionable is, so the septic field operating and accuracy, if that's the dugout, the parcel reconfiguration, and the setback for the dwelling. So those are still, the dugout is one thing too that I'd like addressed.
And I know in discussions with them, they were fine with the removal of the dugout. So I think we've got that one finished, but I will double check and provide an update for next meeting.
We have made a motion to postpone the decision till next meeting. All in favor? That is passed, and that's the way we'll handle it for now. Other business, we have Alberta Wheat Pool. Any comments, Alice?
This is more just an awareness thing for MPC to not even consider, but to look at. So I included information from historical resources, project information about the Alberta Wheat Pool Grain Elevator and Bow Slope Stockyard. So that area is right, if you can see on the arrow here, it's right in here, which is part of county-owned land. This is the EID historical park. So when I overlaid on my ArcGIS map, what happened was it shows this entire quarter section as historical resource. So I contacted the authority with that and suggested that it might be helpful if it did not include the entire hamlet, because that restricts what kind of development can occur there, in that any development in that quarter would have to be reviewed by historical resources and get approval for that development. So in contacting them, they sent me information that I didn't include in this package, but basically shows it's just this area in here with the elevator and the Bow Slope shipyard. That's the only part that shows as historical resource. It's actually a level 4 historical resource, which means any kind of reconstruction or development in there requires approval by the province. So again, this is an awareness thing. They will be updating their maps now that I brought it to their attention. And it's one of the few areas in the county besides Dinosaur Provincial Park that has historical resource value. So again, this is awareness and some of the things that we have to look at when we're looking at permits, subdivision, development, that sort of thing. So I can answer any questions if you have any. Again, this was more just an information kind of thing for MPC.
Thanks, Alice. Are any comments or questions? Seeing none. The other information item was the covered feedlot at Springview. Any comments, questions on that one? Seeing none. Question period. Are there any questions on any matter? Again, seeing none, I will adjourn the MPC meeting.
Okay, we good to go, Ariana? Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And first item on our list here is to excuse Reeve Douglas from the meeting. Kelly makes that motion. Boy, everybody's in a hurry to get rid of her out of the meeting. So. With regret. With regret.
I never got it.
So we have a motion from Kelly to excuse Reeve Douglas from the meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Adoption of the minutes. Hubie? Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Call for post-agenda items. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 in-camera items, legal, please.
And I also have a legal. I'm not sure if they're the same ones as Kevin has or not. So.
Any other items for post-agenda? If not, motion to adopt the agenda. Ellen makes that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Question period? If none, public hearings at 11:30. We can move on to 8.2, get some house cleaning stuff in order. And Diane, Alice, this is yours.
Thank you. So this is a road closure and sale application that we dealt with back in February at public hearing. Just kind of a review here, close and sell road allowances at the locations shown in blue in order to help facilitate the family farm, which is Takeda Feeding Co. Limited. They will be required to consolidate these road allowances with the rest of the parcels to ensure that there is access to all of the lands in there. So this has now been given first reading or given approval by Alberta Transportation, and it is now in front of you again for second and third reading, after which we'll finalize the transfer and the consolidation.
Okay, questions? Okay, we have a motion for second reading. Is there any questions prior to taking the vote? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for third reading. Lionel? All in favor? Opposed? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, 8.3.
Thank you. Again, this is an application that we did public hearing back in February. It has been returned from Alberta Transportation. This one is going to be a land swap. You can see on the diagram where the proposed road closure is. There was a road plan prepared to the west of it. The agreement from the historical minutes was that the lands would be swapped. And so after second and third reading, that's what we'll proceed with for this road closure.
Any questions? If not, motion for second reading. Anne-Marie. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Motion for third reading. Tracy makes that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we have your report. I don't know if you have your planning and development report.
Yes. So we can review that right now. There's not really a whole lot to update. The AUC proceedings with Duchess Solar, I had sent you information that had to do with canceling the link to a transmission line, and then I sent a follow-up by email. It's not in this agenda package, with explanation from the contact there saying what they were doing with it. Other than that, there is not really anything new. The exciting thing is that Maria will be training to take over my position, and I officially hand over my planning and development reports to Jeff, who gets to do these now, or not, or whatever council decides. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Any questions for Alice's report from council? Anne-Marie.
It's probably a simple answer, but on page 3 of your report, number 3, subject matter, you talk about transparency of planning documents, and you're working on it. So what does that mean?
That, I have to remember now. That has to do with the hierarchy, I believe. Oh, right. So it's the information that we're putting on the website. So we have to prepare a hierarchy of plans. We have to post it to the website to show how everything is connected, what supersedes what the area structure plans are. So that's why I rescinded all those, or suggested they be rescinded. So the next step to that is going to be organizing all of it and putting it on the website. If you want to look at a really good one, MD of Tabor has done a really good setup with the hierarchy and describing what all the plans are and their relationship to one another. And Bonnie Bruner from Orsk did that one. So really, we could just send a link to the MD of Tabor and say, here, this is what it's supposed to look like. But yeah, if you want to get an example, that's a really good one.
Other questions for Alice? If not, we need a motion to accept her report. Hubie makes that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Before you run away, maybe Maria, if you have a chance, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Some of us know you since you were a little kid, but not everybody. So maybe I'd like to give you the opportunity to speak to council if you'd like. Tell us a little bit about your background, what your goals are, and maybe your fears.
That's a long conversation. I'm Maria Jackson. My family is moving back to this area from Calgary. So we have lived there for 3 years, I think 4 years. 4 years. So my husband and I are both from the County of Newell, and are really excited to come back and raise our family here. And I previously worked with the EID, where I worked a little bit with Diane and Alice on a few small things. And then I worked at Red Deer County. And so I'm excited to get back into the municipal government setting, and I have a lot to learn. And Alice is a good person to, I think, show me the ropes. So yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you. Anybody have a question for Maria? If not, thank you very much for joining our team. We look forward to working with you. And don't learn any of Alice's bad habits. And well, the one overriding, I'm going to leave you with this because, and they've heard this lots. When you add something, you have to subtract 2 out of that bylaw and planning book, policy book. Thank you. Todd. So we're at 10.1.
Morning, everybody. The email from Molly said that we have to pick on you as much as possible, Brian, so.
Easy pickings for you, Todd.
Just kidding. Are we starting with a quick report? All right, so I'm happy to tell you that our roadside spraying is going to start a little earlier than normal. We say that, but the beginning of June we always have kind of windy, wet weather, so we're not exactly sure if we'll actually get going, but we are prepped, we're ready, and we're probably going to get a little bit ahead of things. Just with the dry spring, we're kind of noticing that if we don't we might be behind the 8 ball before we even get going. So that being said, we also have our roadside mowers kind of gearing up and ready to go. We don't think we're going to get moving on that one till a little bit later, but we just don't, if our sprayers get going, we kind of want our mowers to be close behind them so that the timing works out. We did, and I think I mentioned this earlier, we kind of came to an agreement with CPR that we would do some of their weed control for them this season. So we started that this week, and I think we'll be done the kind of downy brome and the early season weeds right away. And then we're going to be working within the city of Brooks on some of the CPR properties, actually, to take care of some of their kochia problems that seem to persist. Just to kind of tie up that part of the town. I know we don't work on any of the sidings in the city. That's a safety thing that CPR likes to train their contractors a little more on, so we don't do that. But we'll take care of some of their properties, because they actually own quite a bit of land on that street. Beyond that, Bazzano, I think, is almost done. They'll be finishing that up today. Brooks is, I think, done our big stuff. Just doing some of the noxious weed work now. Quite a bit of downy brome this year. Then I think we got a good handle on GPSing it. So one of our young vegetation management technicians, I keep texting her every time I'm driving through town, when I'm stopped and at my nearest safe location to do so, to let her know where they are, and she's been going back to do it after. So I think our grassland spraying worked really well. We had a fantastic Friday, Saturday to do it. We got them all done. It took us about 17 hours with a whole bunch of people. But we did that, and we got it done, so we're excited. And we actually been working with them on the Alcoma school grounds and the Rolling Hill school grounds to battle some of their gopher populations. So using a super labor-intensive Rocon applicator, but it's a non-toxic formulation, so we don't have any of those kind of issues with the students. The request came direct from the schools, the principals, and the parents, so we haven't had any complaints. And they've been great. The teachers have kept them inside for recesses when we're out working, so we don't have to stop, and it's been great. We're having an absolute blast working with some of the community groups. I know last council meeting we talked about mowing in Rolling Hills, and Will and Dale had a great meeting. They kind of came up with some plans for that cemetery. And same thing goes for the EID Historical Park in Scandia. They had some great meetings. We were in, did some spraying, did some mowing, and it's just been a blast. So that's kind of fun for us. We don't always get great dialogue, but with the community groups, it sure seems to be an easy sell. And maybe that's because they don't have to do the work anymore, I'm not sure, but it has been working. And speaking of community groups, Scandia, that's where we're actually going to host our TD Tree Days, or that's where we put the application in for. The community has developed a walking path that kind of goes by the storm water pond, and I believe it actually goes around maybe Reese and Echo's one field. But anyway, so I was talking with Reese and Echo Chandler, and they're pumped about it, and I think the community will be pumped about it, and we should have a good success there. And like in a 5-minute conversation, Reese was telling me how he's going to get water to the trees, and we're going to, make some great plans, and those are the kind of people that we have in our small communities, and it's phenomenal. I love it. So on the Emerson side of things, I think we've had a great season so far. Even on our slow weekends, we're still seeing 20, 30 campers in there, and that's a positive for us. I mean, we'd always like to see more. We still have a horrible time with our cell tower when the trees leave out. So I'm going to talk to Dinosaur Park, put in a system last year, I believe. That seems to be working a little bit better than ours, so I'm going to go and pick their brains and see what they're doing that makes it different than ours, because I mean they have the same sort of setup. They're down in the bottom, they got the big cottonwood trees, and they're getting better success than we are. So obviously we're missing something along the way, and we just want to make that a little bit better. We hosted our weed school in Rainier yesterday. It was phenomenal. We had 90 people show up. Everybody stayed awake for most of the day. Great lunch, and we had 5 speakers. I learned things that after 15 years, still don't know. And I mean, we have these poor young students that some of them have just started, and we're just jamming information at them. So I think we had a great day. We learned all about tree pests, fungus, how to actually do weed inspection, what's important under the axe, When they're doing chemical control, we talked about the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act. It was just, it was a great day. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I just thought I would pump my tires because I helped organize that. And that's about all I got for my report.
Well, thanks, Todd. It's great to see that enthusiasm, and I mean, we know how good a job you do, but it's nice when when our community partners see that and see the interaction in there. And you know, your staff has always done a fantastic job, and it's great when you see that out there, and having that positive rapport is important. Questions for Todd on his report? Wayne and Tracy.
Todd, you mentioned Downey Brome. I was in Vauxhall yesterday, and I was out in this guy's field, and man, it just hit me, all this Downey Brome. And I said, well, what are you going to do with this? And he said, well, we're going to mow it pretty quick. That doesn't really do much good, does it?
It can. Mowing Downey Brome this time of year is actually pretty effective as long as the seeds aren't ready to, aren't already beyond where
they're developing.
Yeah. So what we kind of noticed in the past from some of our control work is, you know, when that grass, the Downey Brome, if it's not at the milk stage or if it's just in the milk stage, if you do your control work there or before, you get, it's okay. So mowing and spraying at that point is okay. But anytime after that, the seeds kind of become viable and then you're a little bit less. So mowing is okay. It's not perfect, but it's okay. That's it's funny that you mentioned that. We have many of in that Rolling Hills and Scandia area. We do have a southern influence of ratepayers. So maybe they're just landowners and they're renting to people from those areas. And we do find it a struggle to get the same control of Downey Brome because they're not used to having to deal with it. Mm-hmm. It's relatively new for them in their area. So when they come here, sometimes they show us up on equipment, and we end up with new battles to fight. So. But good question.
Thanks.
Gracie, you had a question.
I did. My question is about Emerson. Do we, for booking, is there online booking, like no pre-registration? And then do we have like brochures with maps of the park and stuff that are out and about, and where do you find them and that kind of stuff?
Well, we love online resources, Tracy. So we do have, the maps are on our website, but when you are down in Emerson, people love a physical map, and we hand out hundreds and hundreds of those every single year. And that's I think a great thing to have when you're down there, because you can see where the trail is and which road you got to take to get to the river or whatever, you know. We don't take any reservations. It's all first come, first serve, unless it's group bookings for the overflow. So some of those big groups, when they are coming in, we'll allow them to book the overflow, whether it be the medieval fair, you know, family reunion, those kinds of things, because they're coordinating a lot of things. We feel like that's a service we should provide.
Do you have like your brochures in hotels and places where, like, you know, where they have like the tourist information and stuff? Because I think that would be kind of a neat promotional thing too, is if you had a slip that showed Emerson Bridge Park. And
that's not a bad idea. I know we do put an ad in the it's like the Visitor's Guide, the Southern Alberta Visitor's Guide or something like that. We kind of have a small ad in there, and then we are on the I was going to quote it wrong, but it's an Alberta government publication that they put out, and I'm not sure if I don't think it's just online. I believe it's another sort of visitor's guide that we put an ad in for that as well. They're not super expensive. It's $400 or $500 each kind of thing, and reaches a lot of people. Yeah, the Alberta Tourism Guide, that's what it's called, yeah. So, but not a bad idea to maybe put a little bit something else together and have it out there. Not a bad idea at all.
Thanks. Any other questions? If not, Todd, you want to move on to your beautification award judges? Judge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. So is there anybody that hasn't judged absolutely gorgeous yards in the county of Newell yet? Oh, my friend Hubie. You can see the excitement on his face. It is a fantastic day. If you've judged 4-H beef, you are going to be an awesome rural beautification judge. You see the connection? We're looking for a really beefy back end with a nice lean top on it, and I don't know. I just listened to it all a couple of weeks ago. We did change the timeline up a little bit because Todd's got to go for his parents' 40th anniversary. So we usually do it later in July, but we had to bump it up a week. So I hope that that works out okay for. Darn it. We can do it all in one day. We can do it all on the 12th. I have to drive a little faster.
I'll make a motion that UB will go as a beautification
Nice.
judge.
Okay, Anne Marie nominates Hubie.
I accept.
It should say 2019, not 2018 rural beautification judge. I know you would have caught it anyways, Todd.
It's caught me plagiarizing last year's RFD, that's all.
I'm shocked. And we need an alternate, it says, and that Councillor blank be an alternate. Anybody want to put their name in case Hubie Tracy? Tracy would be the alternate. Is that okay with you, Anne Marie? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Todd. Do you have anything more for us?
I don't.
Wow, that's about the fastest you've ever been out of there. Actually, I did have a question for you. I know I would. So you mentioned you're going to start your spraying, and I don't remember if I asked you that last time or not, but last year you did some work for transportation on the highway on Trans-Canada. Is that in place this year too, or you're waiting for budget and other stuff?
Very, very timely question. We're actually meeting with Volker and Alberta Transportation this afternoon about 3 o'clock to kind of iron out all the fine details. We've historically been doing the secondary highways within our program, so we'll do the south half, the north half. We just always kind of intermix the secondaries with it. Last year's the first time in my recollection that we sprayed boomless sprayed the number 1 and the 36, and we're hoping that they want us to continue that practice. So we kind of have outlined to control some weeds from the 873 overpass to Emmy's Esso on the Highway 1. I think we're looking for a 5-meter spray on each side of the road. So both sides of the main highway and then the median as well. And the 36, I think, is a 10-meter, so 30-foot kind of control going south from the number 1 to Bow River. So we're meeting at 3 o'clock. So maybe it was a little bit early to say anything at all, but that's kind of our goal, is to include everything again.
Okay. Well, thanks, Todd. Thanks for the good work you do once again.
Thank you.
So we have 11-2. Keith, does he need to be here for that, or can we move?
I can speak to that one.
Okay. So 11-2 is the mutual aid agreement with Vulcan County.
So we have been for a number of years going through the process of updating the mutual aid agreements that are in effect. There's a template that has been developed for these agreements, and what we have before you today is based on the template that we have with the MD of Tabor. When Vulcan was first approached, they just weren't in a position to deal with it originally, but have since come back and are wanting to move ahead. These mutual aid agreements basically outline the arrangements that would exist between municipalities, where they would be called in to provide service for us, or we to provide service for them in the event of a significant incident occurring within either jurisdiction. So the report and recommendation from Keith is that Council provide approval for the agreement that is before you at this time.
Thanks, Lane. Any questions regarding the agreement? Anne Marie?
I'm going to suggest a change in point 14.8, where I have to go by memory here, but people are requested to get in touch with Keith and there's another name. So they mentioned names, and I just thought we shouldn't put names in that agreement. We should put positions in there.
Correct. We can certainly make that change.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Any other comments or suggestions? If not, I'm assuming we can move ahead prior to, or do we need to see this back again?
We'll be able to make that minor edit change. That won't be a significant one at all.
So looking for a motion to sign the agreement with Vulcan County. Wayne makes that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we have our guests in the yard here. I think we're going to wait for after public hearing. Is that okay? Because otherwise we're up against the clock for only 10 minutes, and you're not long-winded at all, any of you. So we don't want to. So if that's okay with you, our public hearing's at 11:30. We'll do some house cleaning things, and then we'll just move on, okay? Meeting with Grasslands on June 20th. Ariana.
Hi. So we're hosting. It's going to be here starting at 4 o'clock with dinner kind of in the middle. I'm just looking for agenda items at this point.
Suggestions for Ariana? Kelly.
I'm just going to ask council their thoughts on this before it goes to the agenda. It's come to my attention that Grasslands has started to do clumping of picking up of kids in acreages. They've started in Emoto Acres, so that's where it came to my attention. And I've had phone calls, I've referred them to the school board. And so I guess maybe could we ask if they have a new policy about picking up in acreage situations, or I know it's not our business, it's their business, and that's what I tell people when they call me. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Do you have questions about that?
Well, I think it's appropriate to ask that question because if I can envision the way you're describing it, the students would be using the roadway to access a common pickup point. So I certainly wouldn't have any problem as that being an agenda item. Anybody else? Any other comments? Helen?
Just a question. Like it used to be that they would go to every individual's residence to pick up the children, and now, and that's going to change. Okay.
It started in February already, and so it's been a long burning, and I was hit in the grocery store again yesterday with it, so it's not gone away.
Okay, so you got that, Ariana. Any other agenda items? Wayne?
Just to get the Grasslands opinion on the new educational bill that's coming out and see what their opinion of it is and where they're going with it.
Okay, good question. Other questions? Well, we certainly have the opportunity that if something comes up, you can either circulate it ahead of time and give Ariana a heads up, or you know, if you're not sure if it's appropriate, certainly circulate it within council. But other than that, have they submitted any agenda items either? Or? Okay. Okay, so it might be just a lunch and a couple quick questions. So. Anne-Marie.
I'm going to assume they give us updates again on numbers in each of the schools and how things have changed or not.
Okay.
Or should we put that on the agenda?
I think asking for an update and providing an update on our, you know, how our operations interact with theirs as far as, you know, perhaps dust and some of the things that we deal with in certain parts as far as our dust abatement And if we have had changes as far as our protocol and our procedures, that we need to make them aware of that too, because transportation is a big part of their business and it is our business. So. Okay, so if that, Tracy?
I'm sure they probably will too, but I was just thinking too, an update about the construction of the Tilly School. Isn't that something that's coming forward as the new construction? So I'm assuming they would have that, but I'd like an update on that as well.
Okay.
And any further construction that they may have.
Hubie?
And there's another school going to be built east of Meadowbrook. That's coming too.
Okay. So update on their construction plans. Is that appropriate, all lumped into one?
The only reason I knew about it was talking to the engineer that's working on the Tilly School, and he's also doing soil samples east of Meadowbrook right now.
Well, I think it's just fair to ask if they have a construction plan and how that's lumped in. So, thank you. Do we need Matt here for the set budget date for planning meeting?
No,
Or
we should
with
be able to go
department
ahead.
heads?
It's just a matter of council determining what dates you want to meet.
Sorry, Lane?
It's just a matter of council determining what day you want to meet, so I think we can go ahead without Matt.
Okay. So we have some dates there. Between 2nd of July and July 23rd.
July 18th.
July 8th, a Monday.
When is Stampede? Because sometimes I know Molly has conflict there, and I'm not sure I think it's on the Friday, but the rural beautification, or not the beautification, the Farm Family Award, I don't know what day that falls on. I haven't got it. Tuesday or a Monday. That's what they're telling me.
17th?
How about the 4th?
Well, why don't we go later then? Are we okay with going into August, or is that sort of sacred? Pardon me? 29th of July? I don't see any people waving that off, so why don't we shoot for that? We should probably pick an alternate date too, just in case that first one doesn't work for our staff. We had the 5th of August. Is that's a holiday? What about that week? 6th? First of August? Lane's giving me the evil eye.
It's possible. We'll have to check, because I know that the range of dates that Matt was looking for was up until July 23rd. The sooner the better for this meeting, so that we have time to start working on budget and know what direction council's wanting us to proceed with.
What about the 22nd?
I think somebody said that wasn't work. Anne Marie. Doesn't work? No, not Anne Marie. Doesn't.
But if I'm the only one, it's okay. I'll tell you guys.
You know, I think budget is one of our bigger functions and more important ones. They're all important, but that's a biggie. And I think it's important that we try to accommodate anybody that's within council. We've got a broad range of time. We should be able to accommodate it.
How about July 4th? The early 4th of July or something?
No, I'm not around. What about that? Let's go back to Wayne's 1st of August. This is the alternate date. Okay, 1st of August. Okay, so those are the two dates we'll work with, and hopefully we can accommodate staff, or staff can accommodate us. That would be great. Sorry, you said the 29th? Sure, now you say it. And the 1st? Okay. So, well, first should be the primary, because that everybody can make, and July 29th is our secondary. Does that work? Does that work for you, Kev?
I will make anything work for you guys.
No. And I know you have a wedding, a daughter marrying in August, and I don't want to interfere with that. It's pretty important. Okay. So we have the 1st of August as the primary, and the July 29th as our secondary, or alternate. Okay. And so moving on to 11:5, organizational meeting. Set the date. Oh, we're at 11:30. Wow. Good heads up. Okay, we need to go back to 7.1 where we move into public hearing. Motion. Ellen moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We're in. Wait for our planner.
They're coming.
I just did. Yeah, Alice, we've already made the motion to move in, Diane, we've made the motion to move in, and so the public hearing is in your hands.
Great, thank you. Apologize again. I need to get an office closer to the council chambers. So again, this one is a rezoning application from agriculture to direct control, as well as an amendment to the direct control portion of the land use bylaw that would allow for the development of the Countess Museum. So again, we have looked at their concept plan and provided a council resolution to approve that. This would then just allow them to move forward and get permits for that. All the adjacent landowners were notified, as well as referral agencies. We've received one comment back from Alberta Transportation. That's in your package, so they have no concerns with it. Unfortunately, I also got an email from Mr. Reagan this morning indicating that an emergency had come up and he was unable to attend this morning, but we have been in contact with him. If there's any comments on this?
Questions for Diane? No questions? Kelly?
I was just prepared to make a motion to approve.
We have to move out first. You can make the motion to move out. Okay, Kelly makes the motion to move out of public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, now we'll deal with the bylaw. That is 8.1. And we are looking for first reading, second reading, it says. Is that correct? Second reading? Go
I'll
ahead.
move second.
Clarence moves second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Third reading. Anne Marie moves.
Move third reading.
Anne Marie moves third reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Diane. Boy, it hardly got you in here quick enough. Gentlemen, you're at the welcome to our council. And it's not your first time, so I won't bother with introductions unless you need them. You remember everybody, or I think we all remember you. You're sort of unforgettable. She deserted us. No, her and John went on a quick weekend holiday to Laughlin. Yeah, so. Anyways, you guys welcome. And like I said before, I don't think we need to do introductions. At least I don't think so, unless you need them. If not, then yeah, why don't you just take the floor, and if we have some questions, we'll just respond.
Well, thank you, Brian, and good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all, and I don't think I need introductions with any of you. That being said, I can't always remember first names, but rest assured, when we see each other in the landscape, we know where we're from. So that's good. Well, thank you. As you're aware, this is our part of our 3-year rotation where we try and meet with every one of the councils that we represent at RMA, and we're here to talk with you on the items that you think are the most important, and try and get a perspective from you as to what is taking place within your municipality, or what it is that you need from us potentially, and the likes of that. So I think you know all of us. I don't think we need an introduction on our end either. I'm not sure how much time you've got slotted for us, Brian. Have you half an hour, an hour?
Well, I think we'd take you to lunch, and then we can look at that. And if you have some additional stuff that's important, or we have some pressing, we certainly don't want to miss the opportunity to ask questions or have responses that we would desire post you being here, I guess. So. Don't interfere with our lunch, Al, but other than that, we're good to go.
Well, now that changes the picture completely. No, we've got our standard speaking notes here, and I'm just going to hit the high topics, and then you can drag us back to them if you wish. But our main topics that we normally would present to you are dealing with the recent election within the province, which is not so recent anymore. But a little bit of going over on that. Long-term municipal funding, that would be discussion on the replacement for MSI. A lot of this is stuff we've already shared with you at the most recent conference, and there hasn't been enough changes on it to really bog down this meeting with. Unpaid linear tax, I think that'll come up in a few of the other parts that I want to focus on more than anything, as well as assessing your modifiers. Ag plastics recycling program. I can touch on that very briefly if you wish at this point, where it is now moving forward. And Clean Farms, some of you will have received a letter on it already, or will be in the near future. Your municipalities will get the letter. Clean Farms has been hired to run the 3-year pilot project that we're going to be using throughout the province to try and rationalize a realistic program for ag plastics collection, focusing on grain bags and twine at this time, but also at the same time doing a bit of a characterization of what is out there on the landscape from all different types of plastics, and then trying to understand the logistics of how you can move those plastics to market, and what collection looks like, what the costs are going to be. We have a huge province, and so we have to make sure whatever we come up with, ultimately, when we want the province to deliver something, they want the data to know what's it going to take to move it from either Cyprus to a market, or Pincher Creek or Mackenzie County or Grand Prairie, wherever it is, that's all part of that process. So we have a long list of municipalities and waste commissions that want to be involved in the pilot, and so I'm not quite sure how we're going to sort out which ones are going to be engaged, but that will be taking place in the near future here and moving forward. 3-year pilot, and we hope to cover as many of the municipalities as possible that way.
Let's cut in now. Brian, what are you currently doing with your ag plastics?
Defer that to our regional waste and recycling representative, Lionel. I have a broad view, but he has a more specific.
Well, presently we don't, for one thing, we don't collect a lot of them here, or there are not a lot of them used other than twine. And we will accept twine, but not the big bags. We're not set up for it, and there aren't many here anyway, so it's not a big problem. But you know, until we get a market for the product, it's really hard to spend a bunch of money on it. So that's the biggest difficulty, and I don't know if you've found some more markets, but we certainly haven't.
Well, and I think, Lionel, that's exactly what the pilot is intended to do, because it's hard to develop markets when you don't know what's available on the landscape for a processor to invest money into doing. And so that's part of that whole process. We need to understand what is out there, what's it going to cost to bring it to a collection area that then can take it to the market. So that's why it's a pilot, is to explore that, because there are the challenges of trying to understand a system that'll work. And I agree. Why collect it if you don't know where you're going to go with it? We've got some of our member municipalities are collecting it, and they have found markets, but those markets are not expanding at the time. So it's a process. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware, and commissions are invited to be part of that discussion, because often they're going to be the ones doing the collecting. But I'm going to, because time is going to go by quickly, with your permission, I'm going to go to a few of the items that I know we came here to learn from you on as much as anything, rather than, you know, share some of the other stuff. We can always go to the other stuff later, but you know, one of the big focusing items that we're trying to understand is, and you guys are in the middle of your discussions on this, and you guys are talking about ICFs from an amalgamation point of view, and sharing your discussions with your communities that way. So one of the items that we were just curious, how is the ICF discussions, or your process of discussions going? And you know, what challenges have you seen, or if any, and those kind of things, and just trying to gather information from our members from an unofficial point of view, but just to get a sense of how things are going that way.
Well, we've signed the one with Bassano. That's our only one that's in ink in as far as the municipalities that we are within our boundaries, and Kevin can give you probably a better summary on the way the other ones have gone. So.
You want the political summary? So we have signed one with Bassano. It went very well. We have the MD of Tabor's done as well. We anticipate the rural ones will be fairly straightforward. We will use our MD of Tabor template. So our focus right now has been on the IDP portions to get that completed. And then, of course, the regionalization, we're at the table to look at service level efficiency. And it's our belief that that's the most efficient model. Whether it's acceptable, there's various viewpoints on whether it's acceptable or not. But we've had a number of meetings. We're ramping up, believe it or not, double meetings in the summer months, which we usually don't do. But we're trying to meet sort of a year-end deadline to make some recommendations one way or the other. We've had initial discussions with the City of Brooks administration-wise, and council as a whole has met with their council. The focus is going to be on the regionalization and the amalgamation, as far as I understand it. So Of course, there are a number of interests, but the group has been fairly, the working group has come together fairly well. Rosemary and Duchess have backed out, so that's just Pisano, Brooks, and us, but that model is still efficient. It's not as efficient as having all 5 members that would come together, because there's the landfill, there's the water corp, there's a senior housing foundation that are all set up with individual administrations and individual systems that would really benefit to be a part of the bigger picture, but we'll have to cross that bridge at some point in time. So I think we're at the sort of the governance, the elected representation stage, and we've dealt with that a number of times. I think the committee has agreed that five members will come from the county in all the models that they've suggested, and it varies with Brooks having 4 or Brooks having 5, Pisano having 1, the Mayor Reeve elected internally, the Mayor Reeve elected at large. So there's 4 different models that they're looking at. We have to take them back to our council and find out which model they support. The 3 parties will come back together, and more importantly, which models they won't support, because they kind of want to make this maybe not the preferred choice, but a choice that will work for everybody. On the taxation policy side, we've had some basic discussions on that. The committee has ruled out a standardized taxation rate for residential and non-residential properties across the board. They have recognized the fact that rural residents don't have access to the same quality of services. So, that statement will be coming out in the press release. So that is very positive. What the rate differential is between an urban residential and rural still needs to be deciphered, but they briefly talked on service levels for the region, but we'll deal with that a little more as we get into it. The committee has agreed that service levels won't be reduced. That is a goal, and that the goal is to enhance them and to deliver them at a more affordable cost. So initial numbers, with everybody coming together, we were looking at a minimum of an $8 million savings, which is a lot of money. Now with 2 out, we don't know exactly. The finance staff from us in the city are working through sort of a proposed high-level budget to get a better idea. The other thing that the working group has said that they want to do, if application decides to move forward, is to meet with all the key stakeholders, libraries, nonprofits, businesses, those that are affected, take a day or 2 of actual individual delegation meetings to talk about things and try to figure out how to deal with those impacts that may come. So it's a long ways away. We do have a sector of the county that is interested in a plebiscite to bring the issue to a vote on whether to proceed or not. So the advice that we've been providing people is that they need to address that through the minister. Our belief is from the MGA that it's a multi-jurisdictional application. A municipality can make application. We're obligated to be at the table, not by choice, but we have to be there. We have to be there in good faith. And at the end of the day, the minister will make the decision. He or she at the time, he currently may decide to have a plebiscite, may decide to have a plebiscite by jurisdiction, may decide to have a plebiscite as a whole. We don't know. So we're having a hard time providing, proper advice on that request because it's not 100% clear whether a plebiscite for the county council to cease being at the table or a vote would be upheld. My view of the MGA is it won't be. The minister needs to make that decision. So I think, there's mixed views on it. We're at the table in good faith, trying to make this work. Whatever, it's a long ways from happening. There's a lot of bridges to cross between now and then, but I think, Clarence can probably, he's on the committee, he can probably add to what I'm saying from the political perspective, but the committee has worked well. We've hired a lady from Conoco Business Solutions out of Strathmore that's facilitating for us, and I think that's working well because you keep the separation between the groups, and she sort of facilitates that. So.
Good. I guess the clarity that I was hoping to hear, I think I got out of that, Kevin, and this is going to take a while, and so you're still pursuing the ICFs to make sure that there's the MGA needs are being met that way. Is that the way? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, my understanding is we won't be pursuing the service levels in the ICFs until this process is done. So our goal is to have it done by the end of the year, and so we'll have 4 months.
So it is moving fast, that fast. Okay.
To at least the recommendation by the end of the year, right? So there's absolutely no point in going through the ICF exercise if the goal of the group is for the next municipal election to move forward to a new structure. Otherwise, that time will be wasted. But on the flip side, if we don't come to that consensus, we have a pretty short window to try to hammer out 3 ICFs. So maybe the mediators will be busy in May, I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Clarence, did you want to add a political perspective?
Kevin has handled the high-level stuff fairly well.
Good. Now, the reason I wanted to bring it forward is it is a commonly asked question is, so what does it look like? Because other municipalities are watching, and I don't want to be inaccurate in anything I comment on, because it's not my message, but at the same time they do ask us, and so I wanted to be consistent with that. And I know Gerald just grabbed some information off your front counter, a bit of a Q&A document that was there too, so I think that's important information too, so thank you for that. One of the other things that I think is front and center, and it ties to a few of the other items we're going to talk about, is the whole assessing your modifier position that we've seen, and the variables and the political tone that has affected that in the last little while. That on top of the uncollectible taxes, some municipalities have got significant amount of what I'll call bad debt from oil and gas companies. Spiraling that into now the recent situation with Trident, and I understand from the communications I've seen, Trident has not been a big player within your municipality, but the impact of Trident is a big item that has got the attention of the provincial government, and it has led to now some significant discussions that we've had in amongst with RMA. But it is more the discussion of shallow gas and the situation that's coming up on the whole challenges of the shallow gas industry, which has affected about 15 to 20 of our members, or has the potential to affect that many. And so when the Trident item went public, they made some rather strong comments about a few of the factors that drove them into bankruptcy, and I won't say that they are the only ones, but the ones that they talked about that directly affected us is the what they call high property taxes, and the high AER fees that they have to pay, and high landowner leases. All are things that have been in place for a number of years, and items now with a world market that has affected their revenue stream. It is now caught the eye of the provincial government, and those are the discussions that we were asked to come to municipal affairs just shortly after the minister was appointed and have a conversation about it, with his intention of sending us back to work with EPAC, so the Explorers and Producers Association of Canada, and to talk about solutions for this, and all in the midst of us having our tax notices gone out for most municipalities in the beginning of May anyway. So it is an item that has captured some significant interest, enough interest that we had a conference call a week and a half ago, I guess it was, with our members. and we had over 50 people sign into the conference call, and a lot of interaction amongst our members to talk about the effects of this industry on the municipalities and what kind of solutions are out there. And I'm not so sure we've had a lot of solutions come forward, other than 2 or 3 comments on maybe some ways of turning this back into the discussions of the province. And I can't go any further than that right now, because this is an open public meeting. So I got to be careful what I say. And we are connecting with the minister on the discussion pieces that we've had with EPAC and that we've had with our members. And a letter will go out tomorrow to the minister that will share our positions on that. The interesting item that has come up in the very short history on it is Bill 7, which you wonder how it ties to it. Bill 7 being the new bill that just came out that was allowing municipalities to run up to 15 years worth of tax concessions or tax incentives that you can do in order to attract business. And you guys are probably aware of Bill 7 already, but it is an economic development approach to it as it is presented right now. It's an enabling legislation that will allow municipalities to come up with special decisions with interested potential businesses or with your existing businesses. We're not quite clear on how all that sits right now. But it all does kind of link together on the fact that we do have a new government, and things are being done quickly. And the new premier has said that things are going to happen quickly, and he's a man of his word. I will say that, because things are happening fast. He also said there's going to be limited to no consultation, and that is another item that he's been very accurate on. Is there is limited to no consultation on a lot of what's coming forward, which is a concern that I think we have, and because we do know that consultation is taking place with the energy industry, and so we want to make sure that we are going to have that same kind of conversation in the future. So I know, looking through your documents and what we've seen for information, shallow gas is a significant player within your municipality, and so this can have a huge effect on you where this ends up evolving. I know your Reeve, Molly was part of the call and shared some of her comments, and they were consistent with many of the other comments of the affected industry players, that this can have a huge impact if this goes the wrong way, a huge impact on the viability or the strength of finances of many of our members. So that's a very high level. You said we're short-winded, but that was a lot of words in a short while. But it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on your thoughts that you're willing to share on that, because this is going to affect a lot that are in the Horseshoe Canyon type development, and works all the way from Cypress straight up through north of Stettler and those municipalities involved in that swath. So, Mr. Chairman, that's kind of the stuff I wanted to open at least with and have conversation on, and we can get to the other stuff later.
Thank you very much, Al. I guess my thoughts are more in terms of how the province is going to deal with it, and you've been very clear on the amount of interaction or impact that our association is going to have, and I'm curious to see how this evolves, probably just as much as you are. And I look at the variation between the tax rates within the municipalities, and I think that's a big concern when you look at, as you expressed, Trident and what they were dealing with when they come to the table as far as the reasons for their financial situation, and how that plays into, as municipalities, the variation between one and the other, and how that affects the bottom line, and how our provincial government is going to look at that, and whether they're going to take matters into their hands as far as trying to balance that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I guess how am I going to start this? I think there is a variability of rates between municipalities, and those rates. I know you guys are on a 2-to-1 ratio with your non-res to res, and that's been your decision based on your local needs, and it's one that I think would be a target for the government to kind of want to get to. But we've got members where they haven't been in that situation where they could keep their residential and non-residential that tightly linked. So it does create challenges when it comes to having a single voice on this, because there are such significant differential amounts, different tax rates. And Gerald and I were involved in the MGA review discussions 6 years ago, and that's where industry came to the table on and said, wait a minute, we've got some municipalities got significantly higher rates than the other, and all there is an invisible line between them. And that's created some of this discussion, there's no doubt about it. But ultimately, we still have to find a solution that is going to allow for viability somehow. Ultimately, I think this may go back to an assessment piece before it has to have a conversation on tax rates. Tax rates are decided locally based on your budgets and the assessment information. We do know that the province is reviewing the assessment process, and I think that's where this needs to be dealt with first, so that the assessment process is meeting today's modern today's state of affairs. The assessment process we have right now, the province shared before the election that it's an old process that was put in place in 2008 when it comes to oil and gas. And so that may need to be reviewed. The shallow gas guys are saying they're being inappropriately assessed compared to the deep well guys that have got both liquids and gas in their operations. And so their point is they're being inappropriately assessed. And part of that argument makes sense to me. I can see that. But at the same time, they've made business decisions that have put them in this spot too. One of the things that we have advocated to both EPAC and to the province is the fact that the industries come and they're pointing fingers right now at municipalities and landowners in the AER. But they've never made their books open and available for a forensic look at how they've operated over the years so that we could have a counter argument. And that's a little bit of an unfair approach, when you can point fingers, because our books are all available on our websites or through a public open process. Theirs are not. And so, how can we go back and rationalize some of the decisions that they've made also? And, the example I'll use is Trident, because they're the ones who threw some of the municipalities under the bus on this. Trident went to one of our member municipalities and asked for tax forgiveness in 2016. And it was not well received by that municipality, so no change was made. Did the same thing in 2017. And it was also received with not a lot of support. And in the meantime, Trident went out and purchased 400 more wells and created a financial obligation by purchasing those 400 wells. And less than 6 months later, they're bankrupt. So we have no way of knowing exactly what they paid or how they've managed that, how they've dealt with their senior executive and their compensation programs as they've declared bankruptcy. We don't have access to that information, so it's easy for them to point fingers when they see our books, but we can't see theirs in order to rationalize our position. So that creates an industry-wide situation because their books are their domain, and they're not willing to open up that domain to share it with us either. So that's all the different items that play into this discussion. A better solution, I don't know. A unified mill rate right across this province totally takes out the fact that every municipality is unique, and that's a big challenge too, because what happens in Mountain View County, which is my home, is nowhere near the same as what happens in Newell or what happens in Cypress. And that's why we have individual councils with that authority to make those rate decisions based on their expenses. So We have not come to a unified rate at all. I know industry would love that, but that's not, I think, a strong solution on this either. So that's a long answer for a very short question.
No, it was actually, it's really succinct actually, Al, and we totally concur, you know, that there's differences within municipalities. I know we're at the lower end of the scale when it comes to our taxation, and we feel that that's appropriate for the services we provide. You know, a different municipality has different length of roads, has different circumstances in those roads, and a different population base. And so those are all things that have to be played into when you're formulating your budget. And I certainly don't think that was certainly my intent when I asked the question about a balancing of that thing. But at the same time, recognizing that if industry is at a crisis, that we need to be there too. I totally agree with you, and we've had one of our producers that's come to council with exactly that request too. And at the end of the day, when you don't see their books, you're absolutely right. It's hard to say, well, is it a fair way to look at things and say, well, you know, you're asking for something, we can't see the other side of it. So with the intent that, yeah, you still want them to be here and you still want them to be productive and profitable. So I'm going to ask, is there any other questions before, because I think we'll go till quarter after. That'll give us time for lunch and a little visit in the lunchroom. But is there other questions that we need to bring for Al and Brian and Gerald? Kevin.
So, Mr. Chairman, just on the topic we were just talking about, I think the important thing that municipalities need is some protection for tax payment. If the assessments are adjusted, that's one thing that the province takes the lead on and regulates it. But at the end of the day, there can't be a taxpayer, in my view, that has a treatment where it's very difficult to collect arrears, because the small indication of Trident can be multiplied by thousands of times if there's other companies that follow that lead. And in my view, that's the biggest risk right now, is that there needs to be a mechanism to be able to recoup, other than trying to go after chattels or anything of that nature, right? There needs to be some strength, just like the rest of the tax enforcement process. So if I could give any advice to the provinces to address that sooner than later.
Yeah, and I agree, Kevin, and that was the discussion that was already taking place before the Trident situation, because, you know, we have $81 million of unpaid taxes for our members, and that's based on about 75% of them responding to our request for information. And a larger piece of that this year than ever was those who chose not to pay their taxes. It's one thing to have a bankruptcy, but it's those who chose not to pay their taxes. One of our members had $4 million worth of unpaid taxes, and when Trident went under, and out of that 4 million, or they had more than 4 million, but 4 million of it was companies choosing not to pay their taxes. Now that municipality, that number is down to 2, because when Trident went under, there was now $2 million that Trident was choosing not to pay, that is now recoverable or non-recoverable completely because of the bankruptcy. And it just is escalating, and under the Alberta process, the liens on lands, or the process to collect money from those who are not lands, is a challenged process. And other country or other provinces deal with that differently than we do here. And that's where we were leaning on, is we've got to fix that process to treat taxes for those industries the same as taxes for the other residential or industries that are within our municipalities. That hill may have just got a whole pile steeper to climb, but I do agree that needs to be dealt with, because I'm afraid what may end up happening is the municipalities who are asking for deferment are the ones who are going to just say, well, listen, we're not going to pay it anyways, we're going to keep operating, we'll just choose not to pay it. And much like some of the others have, and where are we sitting then anyways? You know, they can come to you and say, we want you to defer our taxes, or we just won't pay them. And really, you know, what's the difference? The money's not coming to where it's supposed to go. So, and then you've just got an interest discussion, that's all you're talking about. There's no easy solution, and new government is trying to look after the industry and make sure that the jobs are going to be there. And I understand what they want to do that way is protect the jobs, and because those are your and my residents that have those jobs. But at the same time, we have services that we have to supply for our residents.
How has the relationship been with the new minister, Casey Nadeau, and interaction with other government, since the change? I'm just curious about the demographics, if can comment on that.
Yeah, the new government has been extending requests to meet with us, and we've been extending requests to meet with them. It'll be an item that we are going to be talking about. We have a group of MLAs that wants to meet with us to understand rural issues. And that was directly in result to us sending letters to them explaining we have rural issues and congratulations on your election and we'd love to meet with you. So that is taking place. Minister Madhu, we had that urgent request a week after he was appointed to talk about the shallow gas, but then we've had intermittent discussions with him at functions. And I guess to me it was a positive. Even at the throne speech, he sought me out. And I know I'm tall enough, I stand out in a crowd that way, but he deliberately sought me out to have a brief discussion on things. So to me, they're wanting to reach out and have their conversations. Now, that's different than consultation. And the consultation piece is the example, and that's going to be one of the things we're going to deliberately ask for is changes to the MGA. I don't think should ever be done without a little bit of a conversation or consultation with us. And Bill 7 was lacking that. And so that's one of our official requests going to be that we need to make sure that when you're affecting us so significantly or even insignificantly, but Bill 7 is a great item where there are unintended consequences that can come out of that kind of approach from an economic development piece, where you can go out and you can entice companies to come in, but those enticements can affect the companies that are providing a similar service already within your municipality. And it's rare that I will quote the Mayor of Calgary, but I will quote the Mayor of Calgary. He said we have to be careful this does not become a race to the bottom when it comes to tax rates, because that's what it has done in other countries or other states and provinces, where it's driven tax rates down for new people, and those who are there already providing the economic balance in your community end up not having those same rates, and so you can disadvantage them all of a sudden by bringing the new business in with a preferential rate.
Definitely. Other questions? I sort of hog the mic here, so Hubie.
I just wanted to thank you, Al, for your work at FCM with the oil rally at the Hilton. It was great to have that happen there, all the T-shirts.
Well, thank you. And I think it was, that was a collaboration event by both AUMA, RMA, SARM, and SUMA, so the two associations out of Saskatchewan. And it's the Rural Canadian Communities Coalition. And it was that, to try and have the right voice. Let's not go into Quebec City and kick over the beehives and then wonder how you're going to collect the bees. It was more, let's go in there, let's educate them, let's inform them, let's share the information and ask them their points of view too. And I thought it worked out well. Are we done with that approach? No, we're only beginning. And Barry and I have been very clear on that's just the start. It's got to be something we have to continue to work on, because there is a Canadian approach to this that we need to keep advocating, so that they can understand why it's important to us, but they can also understand how it can be important for them.
I want to make another comment about FCM, is that I was surprised how much the rest of Canada really is behind the oil industry. And actually people from Quebec. I had one mayor from a city around Montreal came and made a point of telling me that she was not in favor of what that comment that the former mayor of Montreal made. And quite a few of the other mayors around there were also in that same position. So they want jobs, and they look at our Alberta and Saskatchewan oil as jobs for them. They want it down there. So I was quite surprised with the reaction I got.
Yeah, and I think Scott Pierce, who is from Saskatchewan, or from Quebec, and he spoke at the energy session in the morning, and he pointed out very clearly that the big pushback from the municipalities when it came to pipelines came as a result of a company going into the municipalities with a package. This is what they're going to propose. And then the package that went to the regulator didn't look anything the same. So just put yourself in that position and somebody coming to you and saying, we're going to do this. We're going to put you guys have got power lines, so we're going to put a power line here, and this is what it's going to look like, this is where it's going to go. And then it actually going someplace completely different and having a whole different effect on your municipality. You would not be happy with that either. And that happened from one community to the other, and it created such a distrust. But Wayne's right. There are many that are saying, we would rather have the jobs that come from processing Canadian energy. We would rather have Canadian oil in our refineries rather than bring it in by the ship from countries that we have no understanding of their environmental standards, no understanding of their human rights standards, no understanding of how this is creating wealth within our own country. Whereas when it's in Alberta, Saskatchewan, wherever the product is coming from, we at least have an understanding of how that's being regulated and how that's advantaging Canadians rather than in other countries. And that's very much the message that was coming from a lot of the Quebecers. And that's a message we need to continue to work with. So thank you. It's good to hear that, Wayne.
Thank you. Any other pressing questions before lunch? Well, please join us for lunch. I'm sure there's lots. And continue the conversation as we know what will happen.
So I did all the talking. I didn't give Brian much chance to talk. Sorry about that. But I don't know if Brian's got anything he'd like to add. I feel guilty now.
Please, I think the only question I'd like to ask you, Brian, right now things are happening really fast. Communication back to our members, we've been struggling at. We tried a conference call in order to bring everyone up. Just your thoughts, is that something you want us to continue in the future? Obviously, you can't get everyone on it, but we did try to get administrators and mayors or reeves on it. It's one of the challenges as things are happening so fast right now. How do we make sure we communicate back to our members?
Well, as we all know, communication is one of the most difficult things to get in order. And I think anything that you feel is a strategy that works, let's try it. And if it's different, if maybe one of people around this table has a suggestion, that bring it forward to you. I think it worked well at the last RMA when we had our little meeting after the annual general meeting. I thought that was positive. We can certainly do that again. I can set that up for you again, or you can do it yourself, whatever works for you. And but beyond that, if something comes up, I know Molly and myself, other councillors we're just an email away basically. And if you need to, certainly you might not get a full slate, but if you have some information or some questions that you'd like to glean from our council, I know that those lines are always open for you.
Just that back and forth communication is so important. We need to know what you guys are thinking in order for to be directing us.
Yeah, I think that, I know that I could do a better job there too, as far as relaying some of the things that we are here. So, okay, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you. We'll break for lunch. 1 o'clock is okay for everybody? Okay, we have a delegation at 1 too. So.